Welcome to Doc NYC's 2024 Spring Showcase, our mid-year celebration of documentary film and series. I'm Ruth Somalo, Senior Features Programmer at Doc NYC, and I am excited to be leading a conversation about Rainforest Queens, brought to us by National Geographic. It is my great pleasure to be speaking today with series executive producer Vanessa Berlowitz, director of photography Justine Evans, and cinematographer Tania Escobar. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Having us.
It's so good to have you with us. Thank you so much. And perhaps we can start the conversation with Vanessa, because you co-founded WildStar Films in 2018 after 25 years of working with BBC's Natural History Unit. And you have produced and directed many landmark series. So can you tell us a little bit about how this experience prepared you for this project and how Queens originated? Like, what inspired you to create it?
Sure. I was very fortunate. I worked in wildlife for decades now, and as you say, at BBC Natural History Unit. And in that time, got to work on fantastic series with David Attenborough. We've looked at the planet in all different ways, but something that I really noticed and felt was how few women were kind of rising through the ranks with me, and just feeling, as I came out of the BBC after 27 years of working there, feeling like it was now my time to do something about that. Anyway, at around that time, I had a great conversation with Janet Han-Vissering at National Geographic, and pitched an idea that Justine and I had discussed, which was to look at two matriarchal societies, hyenas and lions, both living in the Ngorongoro crater, which is actually now our opening episode, African Queens. And Just and I were talking about, wouldn't it be great to feature both these matriarchal societies because they battle, but also the women behind the cameras. Justine's got a lot of experience filming at night with hyenas, and Sophie Darlington, who's another great matriarch of wildlife filmmaking, has a lot of experience with lions. So I pitched that as a one-off, thinking, won't get commissioned. And Janet loved it and straight away went, we should do this as a whole series. And I went, oh no, come on, it's been done. Surely there's been a whole series on female leadership in the natural world. And we looked around and there hadn't been. So that's really how the series was born. And as you say, because I just started WildStar Films, we were also looking at my husband, Mark Linfield, who I've worked with for many years. We were looking at new ways to make wildlife and to bring more diverse representation in. So discussing this with Janet, who also felt very strongly that this was something she wanted to support, we decided we use the series to put the spotlight and show on great female talent behind the camera. And as a result, we have fantastic talent like Tania sitting here today. But in order to achieve that, I desperately needed Justine's help and Sophie's help to recruit this next generation of great female directors of photography. And that's probably a good place to hand over.
Justine, do you want to talk about it, about how, you were tasked with mentoring and selecting some of the talent and finding Tania? Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yes, it was amazing. I mean, it was so long ago now as well, back in 2019 when Sophie and I came on board in the pre-production stage to start pulling things together. And in the beginning, we were all talking about what this was going to be. I mean, it had gone from one program to 6, and then became 7 with the behind the scenes of the Trailblazing Women program. But with 6 films that had to be top quality, so people with a lot of skill involved in the cinematography, but also with the mentoring side of things. So bringing women on into that field and taking them up to a higher level. So, it was early on. It was like, well, what's this going to become in terms of the legacy? We didn't really know. It'd never been done before, believe it or not. With these big budget series, no one had ever approached it in a production in that way, where you were structuring not just the production of the films, but also all this other ongoing legacy aspect to it. So Sophie and I sat down for quite a few days in the new WildStar offices in Bristol and started putting together names of women who were camera, sort of doing second camera, camera assistant. Some are even at film school still or just graduated. Tania was obviously firmly on the list because she'd already established herself. And we loved some of the work that she'd done. We were familiar with quite a bit of her work, so we knew that she was able to be really tough and work in difficult conditions and still deliver amazing shots. So she was actually a very easy choice. But it was just really, it was an exciting journey. And the hard bit was just narrowing it down, really. There were so many exciting women out there that we could have given a chance to. And, and this is just the start. So hopefully going forward, there will be many more opportunities, but we had to compress it down to a few people. So it was tricky, but, very rewarding.
Jess, I think we kind of agreed that it was better to focus on fewer women, wasn't it? So that you kind of really pass on your skills that you've acquired over decades in a meaningful way, and hopefully move someone like Tania, help her move from already quite established to really just shifting up into that next tier, that top tier, which Tania has so brilliantly done. It was very strategic, where we thought that was the most effective use of this opportunity with this series. Yeah.
You can't really effectively train people up onto that sort of top level if it's too many people. It's such a sort of concentrated thing, on location and feedback with the shots, and there's so much to it that you really have to narrow it down, don't you, Vanessa? It's otherwise it would just be too diluted.
Yeah.
Tania, perhaps you can jump in, because I had a chance to see the behind the scene episodes, and I was so impressed by seeing you on a huge, very high up platform. It looked like you were like 20 stories high, covering bees under a rainstorm, just like shooting with this enormous equipment and just like doing glorious cinematography. Can you tell us a little bit about working in those conditions and what was the experience for you?
Yeah. Well, it was quite intense, but I do like hearing what Justine was saying about how everything started. I do remember those first conversations when I was speaking with Justine and Sophie, and she was asking me, well, which animal would you like to work on? And I instantly knew I wanted to do bonobos. Because no one had done it like that before. So for me, it was like an amazing opportunity and a challenge. I was not sure if I was going to be able to do it. Honestly, it has been, I have done very challenging shoots, but this one's 7 months in the Congo was the ultimate challenge for sure. It was hard, but I think at the end, it was more than worth it. Yeah, when you finally see the whole episode, and especially when you see the reactions of the audience to the story, is when you feel more proud of spending days and days in the rain and get stung by bees and all that. Yeah, when you actually see an impact in people that will never be able to see these animals. So yeah, I think it was an intense experience, but very worth it.
And in this episode in the rainforest, like you both created images of Zoe, or protagonist, that allow people to really emotionally connect with, with her story and with wildlife, and empathize with the bonobos in a very deep way. There's like a level of intimacy, the way you look at Zoe through the lens, it's pretty outstanding. And, you make us fall in love with her immediately and see ourselves like mirrored in her as well. So can you tell us a little bit about achieving this empathetic gaze? Like maybe both of you, Justine and Tania, can talk about this.
Yeah, when you're in the field, you feel like that. When you're spending day after day after day with the animals, with Zoe, when you see these young bonobos, you start understanding their personalities and their struggles and their daily life. So it's easy to feel like that. And then it's just a matter of how you translate those feelings into your footage. I think that's the ultimate challenge. But once you spend the time with them and you are patient, eventually that gets translated into the shots, because you're feeling like that the same way another audience is seeing Zoe. You're feeling like that when you are in the field. So that's what I'm constantly trying to do, to translate those feelings and sensations through the cinematography that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Tania's spot on there. I mean, for me, it's the holy grail of wildlife filmmaking, is actually getting the chance to work on a project where you spend lots of time in one place with the same characters, and you can't help yourself but feel that empathy and understanding, and there's an exchange of behavior between you and the animal. You feel a bit like them, and they maybe, I don't know, they seem to sometimes observe you as well. I don't know if you felt that, Tania, but there is, and I think it helps inform the cinematography if you have that connection, because you start to feel more in pace with them. You're moving the camera at the speed that they move, and you become much more instinctive about it, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And you get more creative because what do you want to focus on, depending on the behavior they're doing, what's important, what's not. So all that previous understanding, yeah, it gets really important at the end of the day, spending the time with them. Yeah. Definitely, you always wonder what are they thinking on you, because they definitely identify you, especially bonobos. They know who you are. The more time you spend with them, they recognize you. So it's an interesting exchange.
Ruth, I think it's worth sort of framing this show in the context of, it's really, really special. I mean, it's the first proper portrait of bonobos. As Tania was saying, it's really difficult to film, and this is like the toughest of the tough. And I think for Tania to have captured this intimacy, as you say, that to be at eye level with Zoe, not only is she doing a really difficult shoot with a very, very unfilmed, elusive primate, but she's also at eye level with the protagonist. And I've looked at a lot of rushes, I've looked at a lot of primate great ape rushes over the years, and I've never felt as connected. And I do think it's something that Tania brought, that effort to be up in the canopy with them day in, day out, and to be, I wonder if it's something about being female, but it definitely felt, Tania, like you were accepted into that group.
Yeah, I did feel like I was accepted sometimes because yeah, primates do know when you're a female or male. So sometimes they don't mind. But sometimes they could feel more comfortable. But also depend on your personality. It could be a female that they don't feel comfortable with, for example, some researchers. So you also have to gain their respect and know their behavior, definitely. But yeah, that ability to spend that amount of time, I think, is what make it special. Especially like the first time we ever filmed them in the canopy, we had never seen them up there. It was the first time we're gonna try it, and the whole team, well, we didn't know if it was gonna work. But it took a while to identify the right trees. We depend a lot on the scientists that we were working on with, and eventually it was like a whole team effort. I was the one that was up there, but I was also supported with a lot of a great team in the ground, to be able to actually get those shots that became so special, because bonobos had never been filmed at the top of the canopy. Scientists were very interested in knowing how they were going to react. And I was actually mind-blowing to see that the matriarch decided that it was fine for me to stay there with them and actually sleep the night with them sometimes. We never thought that would happen. So those little moments also add on to the fact that no one have actually done an entire episode about bonobos. It was a first, and I'm so proud Vanessa and Wellstar went for it. Yeah.
It was risky. It was risky for us, and it was interesting on that show because we shot, didn't we? We shot a secondary story of forest elephants because we just didn't know. No one had really done this with bonobos. We didn't know if we could get into the canopy, as Tania said. We didn't know if we get exciting or interesting enough behavior because it's a lot of this is nuanced and it's emotional. We didn't know that they were involved in the hunting, which was the first that we showed that. So we shot this whole other story with forest elephants and then didn't need it. And that was the dream, was that we could make a pure bonobo show. And you know, thanks to Tania's unbelievable efforts with Justine's training, we've pulled it off. So, but it wasn't a dead certainty, was it? It's a lot of
No. And also, I mean, the bonobos, along with chimps, are probably the hardest thing you can choose to film in terms of the physical endeavor. You know, the remoteness of the locations and then the distances you have to walk to get there to the camp before you even start your day's work. You know, it's formidable. So
I remember
Tania's physical abilities have been sublime. Yeah.
I remember when Just was saying that Tania, because I hadn't met Tania, and you were putting Tania forward, and you know, so many of the toughest men in our industry would turn down this shoot. In fact, many have turned down similar shoots. And I remember saying, "Oh, Tania," and Just said, "We've got the perfect woman." And I was like, "Okay, is she tough? And you know, what's her kind of physique like?" And I think you said, "Not sure how tall you are, Tania, but it's not incredibly tall." Am I right in saying 5'2"? Yes.
Yeah, it was completely the opposite stereotype that you will expect from a top cameraman in the middle of the Congo.
I remember being shocked saying, "Justine, are you sure? Is this going to work? You know, how's she going to cope?" And my God, yeah. Tania busts all those stereotypes completely.
Yeah. It's so much. You know, you obviously need a certain level of physical fitness, but that only gets you so far, and especially when you're there for weeks and weeks and weeks, dealing with these conditions. It's mental. It's the mental determination and stability that gets you there. It's impossible otherwise. You can be as strong as you want. If you can't handle that mental kind of clarity of the mission and how you've got to keep at it every day, you wouldn't be able to do it. It just would be impossible.
Yeah, definitely.
Tania's got that in spades.
Yeah, you need to be extremely persistent, but also like very mentally stable. So, I mean, getting in shape, you just train. Eventually, your body is like training for a very, very long marathon, which you can actually do it at the end of the shoots with no effort. But then it's just a matter of getting used to the daily life, and you'll be impressed when you get there. Most of the work, it's done by the women now there in the Congo. The women are the ones that are carrying the water, they're carrying the logs, they're carrying everything, and they're crossing all the forests, come and go. And they're even tinier than me. They're even smaller than me. So the first impression will be like, oh, you need a very big person to do this job. But eventually it does get translated in what Justine says. And actually being smaller, sometimes you kind of get more, you adapt easier because you lose less calories, you lose less weight, you can move faster in the jungle. So sometimes it's easier not to be that heavy because you have very long days with very few food, for example, because you have to carry everything and very few water. If you are a very big guy, sometimes they were dehydrated and having heat exhaustion. And sometimes I didn't because I don't need that much water as them. Sometimes it was a plus, but it was always sometimes carrying that amount of weight, I couldn't do it for 30 kilometers. So I would need a porter to help me. So you start making like combinations. Yeah. But eventually you get the job done.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, if somebody can take the weight and carry some of the kit, then, you know, that's just working efficiently, isn't it? You don't have to be, you know, just taking it all on and carrying it all, and just, it's not, you know, it's not some sort of competition. It's just being as effective as you can be, isn't it?
Yeah.
As long as you're
And I
taking the animals off in doing so.
for us, we were always working in a team. So when someone was exhausted or something, someone else will take over, things like that. So they will help you with the kit in that point. So yeah.
Vanessa, perhaps you can walk us through the different stages of production to accomplish this incredible feat of a production. Like, how do you like, you know, I know the whole series took like 4 years in the making, but for people that don't know, like the different stages, you know, from research to, you know, can you tell us a little bit about how do you also construct the emotional narrative arcs in the shows?
Okay. Well, there's a logistical production model, which is quite tried and tested, where you have a year before you even turn cameras over and start filming. So Justine and Sophie were very much part of that, what we call pre-production, and that's the research and contacting all the scientists and working out which queens we were going to focus, because we wanted to have different queendoms that felt, you know, that the worlds needs to feel different and varied, and therefore the challenges that the queens faced. And then equally, we also wanted to show very different types of leadership, because we've got everything from, you know, badass orca grannies who will do anything to favor their firstborn sons, to incredibly sociable, self-sacrificing leafcutter ant matriarchs that give over their entire body to their colony. So we wanted to show that there are very different ways to lead. So we balanced, we went through all the possible stories. I mean, there are officially 10 matriarchal societies, but now what many scientists are doing is they're going back and looking at conventional social structures that were supposedly male-led and going, well, hang on, the females have more power and they are displaying dominance. It's just not as obvious, and we've never really studied it before. So we went back and looked at some species like that, like we feature a bear matriarch as well, and just sort of showing how she leads within her own social setup. And that then, once we've moved from research, we go into about 2 years of filming, and that is back-to-back film shoots across all the different episodes. And that's where we have a team of about 20 people in Bristol that are helping coordinate small crews. So Tania, Justine, Sophie would go out with often as few people as possible to have as minimal impact on the wildlife as possible for sort of 4 to 6 weeks at a time. And they may take a second camera that's doing more technical or different types of techniques. So there might be a drone, there might be someone doing tracking shots with a gimbal to sort of build all the different shots that we need. And then we have a year in editing where all of these shows in overlapping phases get edited. We add on the sound, which is captured in the field at the time, but it then has to be reintegrated with the imagery. We add on the narration, we add on the music, and then it all gets mixed together. And after 4 years, you get the series. I think the second question you asked was the emotional narrative. That's something that our very brilliant showrunner and series writer, Chloe Sarosh, worked intensely with the producer directors, the cinematographers, to try and pull out every story beat. So, of course, you write an optimal story based on the research. Tania, Justine goes out, they bring back different material because animals don't follow scripts. Sometimes better material, often amazing narratives would start to evolve because for the first time, we were giving these crews permission to watch what the females were doing and not necessarily look for the big, showy hunts or the dramatic fights that the males were up to. So, of course, we were discovering new things and new behaviors were evolving. And then that would get brought in, and Chloe and myself would look at it and go, let's follow that female. And then that female would become our main queen, or we would just sort of go with the flow of where the narrative was taking us. So that's a constant co-evolution with the teams that are going into the field and bringing back footage. And then, of course, in the edit is where I think we really amp up the level of emotional connection using the tools that we have with music, with the narration, with the style of writing. And then, of course, when you bring Angela Bassett in, who's an amazing actress, who could bring all the range from sort of light touch humor right through to very dramatic delivery, that's when the final emotional connection gets made for the audience. But it's, as you are hinting at, perhaps, the emotional connection is something we strive for from day one. Tania and Justine mentioned is, how do you get we're trying to translate the experience of the empathy that the people at the front line in the field feel, how they look through their camera, how they capture that relationship and that they have, but also that female has with others in her group. And then it's all about sort of holding on to that, distilling it and amplifying it so that the audience can really feel that too.
Thank you. That was wonderful. You mentioned some little bits about technology. Can we maybe geek out a little bit and talk about the equipment that you have been using to shoot this amazing show? Like, because the changes in technology have allowed like nature shows to really evolve so much. So perhaps like the three of you want to talk a little bit about that.
I'll set the context, and then obviously
Yes.
to the directors of photography, because they are the experts. But through the course of natural history filmmaking, I think it's fair to say we are pioneers of new technology that is used in all sort of high-end cinematic, premium documentary and feature films. So every single camera that we can get our hands on that can capture high resolution, they still have to be high resolution, but we will use those in wildlife. So whether it's drones, whether it's the latest night cameras, tracking cameras, motion control, which we used on our leafcutter ant colony, microscopy that allows us to film within a brood of the orchid bee. So every single technique out there, we are pioneering it often and certainly deploying it within our shows. Now I'll hand over to the two women that actually use these cameras.
Yeah, Vanessa's basically said it all.
But we had everything in Queens, didn't we, Jess?
Yes, yeah. I mean, these days with filming, there are a lot of toys that all have their part to play. And I mean, things have been revolutionized, haven't they, since from the last kind of 20 years. I mean, we've gone from filming on film to the digital world, and in doing so, it's unleashed so much potential. Night cameras, for example, the sensitivity of a normal, it's a standard normal camera, but the sensitivity within the sensor has enabled night filming to happen in moonlight, in the brightest moonlight, in color. Well, that was just unheard of, that idea, even a few years ago. And then you have thermal technology, which has gone from looking sort of interesting, but a bit like looking into a murky puddle, to the resolution that we see now, as we've seen on Queens in the first episode, with hyenas and lions fighting it out at night. The detail that you can get is amazing, and it does look like an altered a vision of the world, but in a very relatable way, in a very magical way, and also the fact that you can film in pitch black and see that detail for a kilometer away. You can pick up the heat and the shape and detail of an animal. It's just enabled so much possibility. And then on to the drone world. When I was starting out, people were experimenting with aerial, mounting little film cameras onto home-built helicopters, like little model aeroplanes and model helicopters that the guys were just building in their garages, and then you take them out on location and they would just crash, sometimes into us, and now look at the drone technology, where it is literally off the shelf, quite affordable technology, that is plug and play. You do obviously have to develop skills with it, but it's all just done. You're not spending months with an engineer trying to sort of tease out all the research and development elements of, you know, things not working. It's you know, I mean, I cannot even describe how much it's changed, and it has gone from an industry where we've always been pushing the limits, but we used to have to do it in our own garages, you know, and sheds, and use engineers who do other work to try and build things for you, to actually, you know, things being just commercially available, that have been tried and tested and work. The gimbal world. Sorry.
That great example, just to add some colour to that, just when you were, I was just thinking as you were saying it, with when you were filming Ethiopian wolves, which are really difficult, but that sort of duality where you were, the whole kind of river scene where
Yes.
she's coming back and basically the rest of the troop are basically pushing her off. But didn't you were working long lens with the drone as well, and then able to see things and moving around. I thought that was an amazing piece of technological synergy in a way to capture that behavior.
Yes, because that particular bit of behavior that was happening with the wolves in Bali in Ethiopia was very. It was a crucial storytelling point. You know, we were hoping that Seti would come back, the daughter would come back. But you know, there was you know, there wasn't any great expectation that she would. It would have been a stroke of luck because she'd left the pack. And so the fact that she did come back was this moment where, you know, you thought, well, even if we've got it on long lens, from a distance, it would just be so crucial to our story. And then having two of us and a drone on it as well to give those two perspectives, especially when in a place like that where it's this full of ravines and you're just you can't easily get into a good position. You have the freedom of filming from the air and getting that look down, that plan view where you can clearly see what's going on. You know, it's just a godsend. You know, it helped so much, and it really brought a different perspective, didn't it, to you know, to that giant landscape that you're in Bali. Yeah. So anyway, back to tech. It could go. That could go on for a very long time about, well, you know, the gyro stabilizing systems, the gimbal systems that we used extensively with the hyenas and lions in the crater, in Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania. You know, that enabled a long lens camera to be mounted. We're talking, when we say long lens, we're talking about something that will go up to over 1,000 millimeters, 1,500 millimeters of focal length. Massive, and something that, you know, if you slightly wobble, the tripod will really show up. And you put these systems onto a gyro stabilizer head and then drive a vehicle at speed across rough terrain and get stable images. So that's you know, an exception.
Something like the hyena hunting in episode 1. I mean, just the speed that she's hunting at, and yet able to keep up with her movement and capture that hunt on the hoof, which again wasn't known that hyenas really hunt sort of reliably during the day in that way, because they're always thought of as scavengers. So that kit helped us capture that great behavior. Yeah,
shot by one of our male champion, you know, male DOPs that's championing the female cause in terms of, you know, training and helping get more women into the industry. And he's an expert with the gyro system, and he shot all of that material, which was fantastic, wasn't it?
Well, thank you so very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but I have so many more questions for the three of you. It's been an incredible conversation, and Queens is helping us change senses and sensibilities to inspire action to protect our planet and its creatures. So thank you so much for the work that you three are doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you everyone for watching at home.